We thought the ending of And Just Like That would finally give us closure. After all the messy writing, the strange storylines, and the constant debate online, there was hope that the finale could at least tie things together. Instead, it did the exact opposite. The last episode didn't just fall flat, it left us wondering why this reboot even existed in the first place. When Sex and the City first aired back in the late 90s, it was more than just a show. It was a cultural event. For the first time, audiences saw women on TV talking openly about dating, careers, friendships, and sex in a way that felt raw and refreshing. The show wasn't perfect. Critics often pointed out its flaws around diversity and its sometimes narrow view of New York life, but it had a bold energy that people couldn't ignore. Carrie, Miranda, Charlotte, and Samantha became household names, and the series left behind an image of four women navigating adulthood with honesty and humor. So, when HBO announced And Just Like That, fans felt a mix of excitement and fear. Could the reboot recapture that energy? Could it bring these beloved characters into a modern world where the cultural conversations have shifted so much since the 90s? The stakes were sky high because this wasn't just about bringing back old characters, it was about testing whether a story that once defined a generation could still matter in today's world. The reboot started with a lot of noise. Some praised its effort to update the cast's world to reflect issues like race, gender, and identity in a way the original series never did. Others felt it was clumsy and forced, more like checking boxes than telling genuine stories. And then there was the elephant in the room, Mr. Big's shocking death in the very first episode. That single moment set the tone for the entire season. It told the audience, this isn't just nostalgia. We're rewriting the rules, but rewriting the rules is risky. And as each episode rolled out, it became clearer that And Just Like That was struggling to balance who these women used to be with who they were supposed to be now. Miranda's storyline with Che divided fans. Some found it bold and fresh, others found it unbelievable and frustrating. Charlotte's arc often felt more like comic relief than a meaningful story. And Carrie, who once carried the heart of the show, was caught somewhere between grieving big and fumbling through shallow side plots. By the time the finale arrived, the audience wasn't just looking for an ending. They were looking for proof that this reboot was worth the emotional investment. Fans wanted to see character growth that made sense. They wanted to feel like the journey, messy as it was, had a purpose. Because that's the unspoken contract between a show and its audience. No matter how wild things get in the middle, the ending is where everything pays off. And that's why the disappointment cuts so deep. The finale didn't just fail to deliver closure, it made the problems of the entire season feel bigger. Instead of wrapping things up, it pulled the thread further apart. What was meant to be a chance to reimagine Sex and the City for a new era turned into a reminder that sometimes going back to a beloved story can do more harm than good. Asterisk. The final episode of And Just Like That should have been the moment where all the messy threads finally came together. Instead, it felt like the writers threw everything into a blender, hit the pulse button a few times, and then served the audience whatever came out. It was uneven, rushed, and strangely hollow. Let's break down the key beats of that finale, and why each one left such a bitter taste. Let's start with Carrie. From the very first episode, her grief over Big was positioned as the emotional backbone of the entire season. We were promised a story about loss, healing, and what it means to start over after the kind of love that defined your adult life. But what we got instead was a Carrie who floated from scene to scene without real growth. By the finale, her so-called big moment of moving on boiled down to her scattering Big's ashes in Paris. It should have been powerful, maybe even poetic. Instead, it played like a hollow gesture, more style than substance. Rather than feeling cathartic, it felt like the writers were rushing to cross an item off a checklist. Carrie lets go of Big done. There was no weight behind it, no sense that she had truly transformed or learned anything new about herself. Now let's talk about Miranda. If any storyline had the potential to shake things up, it was hers. Her relationship with Che was meant to be bold, complicated, and modern. And in the beginning, there was real promise and exploration of identity, desire, and middle-aged reinvention. But the way the finale handled Miranda's choices was frustrating. Instead of showing a layered, thoughtful exploration of what leaving a long marriage means, the show reduced her arc to impulsive decisions. By the end, she's following Che to Los Angeles, almost like a teenager chasing a crush, abandoning not just her marriage, but her career opportunities too. Miranda, once the most pragmatic and sharp character on Sex and the City, felt unrecognizable. What was meant to be empowering instead looked careless, leaving fans wondering, is this really the same Miranda who once gave Carrie her most grounded advice? Then there's Charlotte. Her arc in the finale was less frustrating and more insignificant. She had a few heartfelt moments about motherhood and one or two comedic beats, but that's about it. Charlotte's storyline has always leaned toward the traditional, so no one expected her to reinvent herself completely. Still, she deserved something more meaningful than being boxed in as comic relief. She's part of the core four. Yet the finale treated her like background decoration cheerleading for Carrie, smoothing over Miranda's drama, but never really standing in the spotlight herself. And then there's Che. The show introduced Che as a bold, non-binary comedian shaking up the group dynamic. But in the finale, Che's story was written in a way that felt more like a caricature than a character. The comedy pilot subplot where Che forces Miranda into a bizarre situation with studio execs wasn't just awkward. It was alienating. Instead of adding depth, it made Che feel more cartoonish, less human. And it pulled the focus away from the central trio, but maybe the biggest failure of the finale was its pacing. Everything felt crammed into a single episode, like the writers were desperate to tie up loose ends quickly. But in doing so, they didn't actually resolve anything. Carrie's grief? Still shallow. Miranda's future? Unclear. Charlotte's role? Underdeveloped. And Che's impact? More divisive than ever. The finale ended not with a sense of closure, but with a shrug. It was like being told a story that cuts off in the middle of a sentence. You're left staring at the screen, waiting for something more. But nothing comes. Fans of Sex and the City were hoping for at least one thing, emotional payoff. That's the promise of a finale. It's the moment you feel the weight of the season click into place. Instead, and just like that, gave us the opposite. It amplified the weakest parts of the show, its rushed writing, its shallow character work, and its inability to honor the women who once defined the franchise. What could have been a thoughtful ending became a reminder of how far the reboot had drifted from its roots. By the time the credits rolled, it was clear this wasn't closure, it was confusion. Instead of tying the story together, the finale asked the audience to accept broken arcs and call it a full circle. And that's why fans walked away not just disappointed, but angry. Because after investing in these characters for decades, the least we deserved was a finale that respected them and us. So, why exactly did the ending of And Just Like That fall apart so badly? It wasn't just about one weak scene or a single awkward storyline. The problems ran deeper down to the structure of the show, the tone it tried to juggle, and the way it treated characters we thought we knew. When you step back and look at the finale in context, it almost feels like the result was inevitable. The first problem is structural confusion. Good finales usually do one of two things. They either wrap up all the big storylines with clarity, or they leave us with one strong, deliberate question to think about. And Just Like That tried to do both and ended up doing neither. The show juggled too many threads. Carrie grieving big Miranda's reinvention, Charlotte's family comedy, and Che's messy career arc. On their own, each of these could have worked. But by throwing them all together without focus, the writers created a finale that felt like a series of unfinished drafts. Nothing truly landed because everything was competing for attention. Then there's the issue of tone. One of the things that made Sex and the City so special was its balance. It was witty and glamorous, but it also had moments of raw vulnerability. Think of Carrie sitting on her bathroom floor after Big left her at the altar. That was melodrama. Yes, but it was grounded in real emotional pain. In contrast, And Just Like That constantly bounced between extremes, 1 minute trying to deliver heartfelt commentary on grief or identity, the next minute cutting to slapstick comedy or awkward cringe humor. The finale is the clearest example of this tonal whiplash. Scattering ashes in Paris should have been a somber and reflective moment, but the way it was staged almost like a fashion ad stripped it of sincerity. Instead of emotion, we got aesthetic. The third issue is character inconsistency. Fans weren't expecting these women to be the same as they were in 1999 Life Changes People, but growth should feel natural, earned. In the reboot, it often felt like the writers didn't know who these characters really were anymore. Carrie, once the introspective writer who analyzed love and relationships with sharp wit, now seems shallow and passive. Miranda, once the realist and the intellectual backbone of the group, was rewritten as reckless, chasing impulsive decisions without the thoughtful commentary she used to bring. Charlotte, who always had a traditional streak, was reduced to punchlines about parenting and privilege. These shifts weren't just changes, they were contradictions. And when characters act out of sync with everything we know about them, the audience loses trust in the story. Another reason the finale failed is its obsession with being modern rather than authentic. Representation matters. Updating a story to reflect today's world matters. But the way and just like that approached it often felt more like homework than storytelling. Conversations around gender, race, and sexuality weren't integrated naturally. They were inserted like checklists. Instead of showing us how these women would realistically navigate those issues, the show forced scenes that felt written more for headlines than for character. By the finale, that style caught up with them. Miranda's relationship with Che wasn't compelling because it didn't feel like Miranda's journey. It felt like the writers trying to prove they could be progressive, even if it meant breaking the character to do it. And finally, the show's biggest flaw, it forgot what fans came for. At its core, Sex and the City wasn't just about romance or sex, it was about friendship. It was about four women leaning on each other as they stumbled through love and life in New York. That bond was the heart of the series. And just like that heart was missing. Carrie, Miranda, and Charlotte barely felt like friends anymore. Their interactions were shallow, transactional, or drowned out by new side characters. Samantha's absence was deeply felt, and instead of addressing it with depth, the show glossed over it with awkward text messages. By the finale, this missing heart left the show feeling cold. Without the central friendship, every storyline lost its weight. When you put all these issues together, messy structure, confused tone, inconsistent characters, forced social commentary, and the absence of genuine friendship, it becomes clear why the ending collapsed. The finale wasn't just the weakest link. It was the symptom of everything the reboot had done wrong from the start. Rather than honoring the past and building towards something new, the show tried to reinvent itself without a clear vision. And in doing so, it ended up with an identity crisis it could never escape. That's why the finale didn't just feel unsatisfying, it felt inevitable. All season long, the cracks were showing. The ending simply revealed how deep those cracks really were. Instead of tying the story together, the finale exposed the truth. And just like that wasn't built on the same foundation that made Sex and the City special, it was built on nostalgia, spectacle, and a desperate attempt to stay relevant. And that foundation was never strong enough to hold. Asterisk, when the finale aired, it wasn't just critics who noticed the problems. Fans, longtime loyalists of Sex and the City, and curious newcomers alike flooded social media with reactions. And those reactions painted a picture the writers probably didn't want to see. The finale didn't bring people together in celebration. It united them in disappointment. The first thing fans pointed out was the sheer emptiness of Carrie's closure. For years, audiences watched Carrie and Big's roller coaster relationship dominate the original series. It wasn't always healthy, and many viewers debated whether they should have ended up together at all. But no one can deny that Big was central to Carrie's story. So when the reboot opened by killing him off, fans were prepared for a season-long exploration of grief, self-discovery, and maybe even a new chapter in Carrie's life. Instead, the finale gave us a glossy, half-hearted scene of her scattering his ashes in Paris on Twitter and Reddit. Viewers mocked how staged it looked, like an ad campaign for expensive clothes rather than a genuine moment of healing. Fans wrote things like, "Carrie let go of Big the same way she lets go of last season's shoes, pretty, but empty." That sense of hollowness became the main reaction to her arc. Then came the Miranda backlash. If Carrie's ending felt shallow, Miranda's felt insulting. This is a character who once represented independence, intellect, and ambition. She wasn't perfect, but she was often the most grounded voice of reason among the group. In the reboot, however, Miranda's journey seemed to abandon all of that. Fans were furious at how the finale showed her dropping her career and following Che to Los Angeles with almost no hesitation. On social media, the phrase, "This is not my Miranda," trended among frustrated viewers. People compared her storyline to fanfiction gone wrong, wish fulfillment for the writers at the expense of decades of character development. Some even said Miranda was unrecognizable, not because she had grown, but because the show had rewritten her into someone entirely different. Charlotte's reception was less fiery, but no less telling. Fans didn't rage at her arc, they shrugged. Many viewers admitted they skipped through her scenes because they felt repetitive or shallow. Charlotte, once a character whose desire for a traditional life sparked meaningful debates about love, family, and happiness, was reduced to punchlines about parenting and awkward party scenes. In online discussions, fans described her as background noise in a show she was supposed to help anchor. That indifference is almost worse than anger. It meant the finale didn't even give fans a reason to care about her, and when a core character becomes irrelevant, the whole show loses its balance. And then there's Che, the lightning rod of the entire reboot. Che was meant to bring something new, shaking up the world of these characters with a modern, non-binary perspective. But by the finale, Che had become one of the most divisive TV characters in years. Some fans supported the idea of Miranda's new relationship, but admitted the writing made Che feel one-dimensional, loud, self-centered, and more of a plot device than a person. Others outright hated the character, describing Che as the worst part of every scene. The comedy pilot subplot in the finale was the final straw for many. Fans joked online that they were hate-watching just to see what ridiculous thing Che would do next. Instead of fresh representation, Che became a symbol of how poorly the reboot handled its attempts to modernize. But maybe the strongest reaction from fans wasn't about any single character, it was about the absence of Samantha. Even though Kim Cattrall refused to return, fans never stopped feeling her absence. The original series was about 4 women, not 3, and the finale proved just how much the reboot missed her presence. The brief text exchanges with Samantha felt like cheap band-aids over a much bigger wound. Fans longed for the charisma, humor, and boldness Samantha brought. Without her, the finale and really the whole season felt like a party missing its brightest guest. Beyond individual characters, the finale sparked a broader debate about reboots themselves. Fans questioned whether shows like this should even exist. Online discussions compared And Just Like That to other reboots that stumbled, like Fuller House or Gilmore Girls, A Year in the Life. Many viewers argued that some stories are better left in the past, preserved in the time and place where they mattered most. Others admitted they tuned in out of loyalty, but ended up hate-watching, posting memes, and laughing at the absurdity rather than genuinely enjoying the story. In a way, the reboot became more of a cultural spectacle than a satisfying continuation, and yet despite the frustration, one thing is clear: people still care. The volume of online reactions proves how deeply Sex and the City imprinted on audiences. The anger, the disappointment, the endless memes, all of it came from a place of love for what the series once was. Fans didn't just want more episodes. They wanted the magic back, the chemistry, the feeling of watching women navigate life in a way that felt both aspirational and real. The finale didn't give them that. Instead, it reminded them of what had been lost. In the end, the fan perspective can be summed up in one word: betrayal. Not betrayal in the dramatic sense of a plot twist, but betrayal of trust. Viewers gave the reboot their time, their nostalgia, and their hope. The finale gave them back confusion, frustration, and the sinking feeling that maybe some stories really shouldn't be continued.